Okay, let's dive in. You've pulled together quite a bit of material articles, notes, sources, all about the ongoing legal situation with Sean Diddy Combs.
Yeah, it's a lot. We're seeing everything from, really shocking court testimony, a major lawyer quitting suddenly, to just the basic realities of his life now behind bars and how this is all rippling out.
Our goal here is pretty straightforward. Help you navigate this whole complex story, but only using the facts and the perspectives that are right there in your source material, so you can get a clear picture.
Well, I think a moment that really caught people's attention, according to your sources, was the sudden exit of one of his main lawyers.
Ah, yes, Anthony Rico. High-profile guy. Your sources really detail this. He filed the paperwork February 20th, 2025, and then just 4 days later, boom, judge approved it.
And the language he used, it's pretty striking based on what's cited in your sources. He apparently wrote something like, "Under no circumstances can I continue to effectively serve as counsel for Sean Combs."
Wow. Under no circumstances. That's strong.
It really is. Very definitive.
One source even made an analogy like, it's like your doctor saying absolutely nothing I can do here based on the scans, or a top chef just walking out.
And this wasn't just some random lawyer. Rico's described as a veteran, right? Handled really high profile, sometimes controversial clients before.
Exactly. So for a lawyer with that kind of background to reportedly just step away like that, well, your sources say it carries a lot of weight.
It definitely makes you wonder what could have possibly happened to make him withdraw so abruptly.
Well, attorney-client privilege means he can't just spell it out, obviously. But sources close to the case, the ones you've gathered, they suggest the timing is really key here.
Okay.
Reports indicate that right before Rico left, these private recordings, allegedly conversations between Cassie, Ventura, and Diddy, somehow surfaced or were made available.
Ah, right, those alleged recordings. We don't know exactly what's on them, do we?
No, the precise content isn't public, but your sources are indicating that whatever is on them was incredibly powerful, potentially game-changing information for the case.
One source even used the word nuclear to describe the effect of what Cassie allegedly presented. Powerful enough to make an experienced lawyer like Rico just walk away.
And this seems to have, prompted a reaction from Diddy's remaining lawyers, according to your material.
What'd they do?
They reportedly tried to counter it by releasing some text messages from Cassie. This whole back and forth, trying to put out potentially damaging info, one source called it basically trying to sway public opinion, outside the actual courtroom.
Right, like a PR battle alongside the legal one.
Yeah.
But it sounds maybe reactive.
Seems that way. Officially, Rico's spokesperson just cited irreconcilable differences with Diddy. Standard phrase, maybe.
But your sources read more into that.
Yeah, they interpret that, especially in this context, as probably covering up much deeper problems, like fundamental disagreements about the case, the strategy, suggesting it was a serious break.
And his leaving, especially with his reputation and that timing, right after the recordings allegedly surfaced, it sends signals, doesn't it?
For sure. Others in the case, like the prosecution, they definitely be looking at that thinking what could possibly make him quit.
Your sources also mentioned, haven't they, that Diddy's reportedly had trouble keeping lawyers throughout this whole thing.
Yeah, that's noted too. And some observers cited in your sources see that as maybe reflecting just how complex or, frankly, how difficult the allegations are.
Right, because lawyers usually stick with a case, especially a high-profile, presumably high-paying one, walking away midstream. It often suggests major problems that are maybe seen as insurmountable or ethically tricky.
Exactly. Your sources argue lawyers don't just leave unless they feel the situation is just untenable somehow. And the timing right after those alleged recordings came out seems unlikely to be a coincidence, according to the reports.
It really highlights how potentially damaging those recordings are perceived to be. Like, one source put it pretty vividly: if whatever surfaces is strong enough to make your own lawyer quit.
Yeah.
Just putting out some old text messages probably isn't going to cut it as a counter move. It suggests, a big difference in the potential weight of the evidence.
So Rico leaving isn't just about legal strategy, maybe. Your sources see it as potentially a commentary on the situation itself. They're professional lines, right? And whatever line was perceived to be crossed here, it was apparently significant enough for Rico to feel he just couldn't continue.
Ethically or effectively.
Even with the money likely involved.
Right.
So where does that leave Diddy's legal team now?
Well, reports say he still has 5 lawyers left, including Mark Agnello and Tenny Garagos. But Even that remaining team might be having issues. Your sources mention reports of infighting, a lack of a unified focus.
Internal disagreements.
Yeah.
That's definitely not what you want heading into a major trial. Sounds like based on your sources, they've got some real challenges putting together a solid defense strategy.
Yeah, seems that way. And while his lawyers are dealing with that, Diddy himself, well, he's been living a very different reality since September 2024.
Right, since his incarceration, he's at the Metropolitan Detention Center, MDC, in Brooklyn. And MDC Brooklyn, according to your sources, it has a reputation. Known for pretty challenging conditions. Other well-known people have been held there while awaiting trial.
The descriptions in your sources just paint such a stark picture. A total flip from, the reported private jets and luxury life to prison cells, communal areas.
Yeah. One physical change that's mentioned is his hair and beard turning gray. Apparently, hair dye isn't allowed in the facility.
And that was visible, wasn't it? During court appearances, he's been seen in just the standard khaki jail uniform, not the designer stuff.
Right, and your sources offer different takes on that appearance. Some say it's just, the reality of being locked up. Others speculate if it might be seen, by some anyway, as maybe trying to get sympathy. It's such a sharp contrast to decades of reported luxury.
In the place itself, MDC, it reportedly faces criticism over conditions, issues with violence, lockdowns, maintenance problems.
Even the part where they supposedly keep high-profile inmates isn't immune, right?
Apparently not. Your sources mention a fatal stabbing there in June 2024 and another death in a fight just the next month. It highlights, the kind of environment described in the reports.
Definitely a stark environment.
Yeah.
A long way from private security details.
His day-to-day life there is described as very strict, a rigid routine. Breakfast reportedly at 7 a.m., mandatory bed checks, meals in a common area, standard clothes, even bathroom stalls with limited privacy. It's regimented, nothing like his old life.
Your sources do say he gets some access to a laptop, though, non-internet, for legal work.
Yes, reports say he can review evidence daily from 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. in a special visiting room. And he's apparently very focused on that, meeting often with his lawyers.
Still, that level of restriction, that routine, it's a dramatic shift. Your sources do mention family support has been important for him, though. Visits from his kids.
And that brings us maybe to the courtroom itself, and specifically the testimony from Cassie Ventura. Her testimony is described in your sources as having a huge impact.
Yeah, 3 straight days she testified. And reportedly, while being about 8 months pregnant.
Which your sources highlight just the strength that must have taken recounting potentially traumatic events in court under those conditions.
She apparently testified pretty extensively about their relationship, spanning roughly a decade, right? 2007 to 2018.
That's the period mentioned. And she described these private parties.
Which, according to her testimony cited in your sources, weren't just typical parties. She allegedly testified they involved inappropriate situations with hired performers, and that Diddy wasn't just there, he was allegedly directing them.
And according to that testimony, as reported, she alleged he controlled access to substances, maintained control over who was there. She said she felt heavily objectified.
And that arranging these parties, hiring people with Diddy's money, became sort of her job. That's what she testified.
Yes, and she described how these experiences left her feeling, quote, physically and emotionally cooked.
Your sources also report she testified about alleged blackmail, too, saying Diddy threatened to release private recordings if she tried to leave or didn't do what he wanted.
Yes, that allegation is highlighted. One source called it an extreme form of control and coercion. Using personal recordings like that is presented as a really severe alleged tactic.
And beyond the emotional side, there were the physical abuse allegations. We know about the hotel video that came out.
Right, allegedly showing him assaulting her.
But Cassie reportedly testified that that incident, it wasn't isolated, it was part of a bigger pattern. She described alleged physical violence being mashed in my head, dragged along the floor, kicked, stomped on my head.
The graphic detail of that testimony is really emphasized in your sources.
She also reportedly testified that Diddy was behind the arson of Kid Cudi's car back in 2012, after finding out she was involved with him.
Yeah, and sources indicate that claim was reportedly backed up by Cudi's representatives. Your sources suggest that specific allegation really paints a picture of alleged extreme behavior, that desire for control.
So how did Diddy's legal team respond to all this in court? Your sources mention attorney Anna Esval leading in court.
Right. Their defense strategy, as outlined in your sources, seems to be trying to frame the relationship differently. Not as one-sided abuse, but as consensual and mutually volatile.
Mutually volatile.
Yeah.
Your sources analyze that approach, right? Arguing it's kind of misleading when one person allegedly had so much power and is accused of making threats.
Exactly. They also reportedly brought out old text messages from 2016, apparently, where Cassie allegedly said things like, "We can have fun. I don't want you thinking I don't want to," about one of the gatherings.
And your sources see that as an attempt to
Basically minimize or discredit the whole pattern of alleged abuse she described, framing it as a tactic often used, to try and chip away at a victim's credibility.
The defense also reportedly went after her character and motives by bringing up the civil lawsuit settlement, the $20 million one she reached with Diddy in 2023.
Yeah, describing your sources as an attempt to paint her as being primarily motivated by money, implying her testimony now is somehow less believable because she settled before. Some sources definitely noted how insensitive that line of questioning felt, given the allegations.
They also made arguments about jurisdiction, didn't they?
Yes. While reportedly acknowledging there were issues in the relationship, which one source called a massive understatement, they argued the alleged actions don't add up to federal crimes like racketeering or trafficking, that the case should really be in state court.
So the argument is basically the federal charges are an overreach.
That's the core idea presented in your sources. One comparison drawn was like arguing a notorious mob boss only had accounting problems when he allegedly ran a huge criminal enterprise, sort of minimizing the scope.
And Diddy himself, during all this testimony, how was his demeanor described?
Reports in your sources say he mostly sat silently, maintained a stone-faced expression. Occasionally, he reportedly made heart signs or blew kisses towards his family who were there in the courtroom.
That silent presence is pretty significant, facing such serious accusations directly. He can't respond right then, obviously.
No, he can't. It just leaves Cassie's account being heard by the court, by the jury.
And that presence of his family, you mentioned, that's been consistent, right?
Very consistent. Your sources highlight that. His family, including reportedly 6 of his 7 kids and his mother, they've been there pretty much constantly since his arrest back in September 2024.
They were seen holding hands going into the courthouse on the day jury selection ended and the trial opened.
Yeah, and even in earlier appearances, your sources describe these visible emotional exchanges, waves, blown kisses, fist pumps between Diddy and his family. And his kids have spoken out publicly, too.
Right. His adopted son, Quincy Brown, posted something on social media back in October 2024.
Reportedly speaking for the family. The statement mentioned the past month had devastated them and that people were judging based on accusations, conspiracy theories, his words, and, quote, false narratives that spiraled into absurdity on social media. It ended saying, "We stand united, supporting you every step of the way."
Interesting use of conspiracy theories there. Your sources point out that some publicly available things, like that hotel surveillance video allegedly showing the assault on Cassie, are presented as evidence, not really a theory.
That's a fair point based on the source material.
Yep.
And the children actually being in the courtroom, attending the proceedings, that has deeper implications according to observers cited in your sources.
How so?
Well, their presence, their visible support, it could potentially, humanize Diddy for the jury, maybe counteract the prosecution's narrative of him, seeing him with his kids, his mother. It reinforces that family man image.
So potentially a strategic element, presenting him as a father, not just the person described in the testimony.
Some observers cited in your sources see it that way, but your sources also note that others question if it's appropriate, exposing young family members to really graphic, disturbing testimony. Diddy's daughters reportedly even left the courtroom during some of the more explicit parts of Ventura's account, which makes you wonder, as your sources ask, why bring them in the first place if you know that's coming? Suggesting to some observers that maybe the goal is more about creating sympathy than actually shielding them.
And public reaction, as described in your sources, it's been all over the place, hasn't it?
Deeply divided. Social media responses range from, praising the family for being loyal to criticizing them, questioning their judgment.
There were even reactions in the court building.
Yeah, reportedly during Ventura's description of the alleged party activities, someone in an overflow viewing room apparently shouted out disapprovingly and got escorted out.
Wow. And the media coverage.
Widespread reporting on her emotional testimony. Judge Subramanian reportedly denied media requests for certain footage related to those alleged activities, citing the risk of re-victimizing her. That decision caused some debate transparency versus protection.
But your sources acknowledge the judge was at least showing consideration there.
Right. Meanwhile, some fans reportedly still defend Diddy, arguing maybe his past behavior was bad, but not federal sex trafficking bad. Others see his changed appearance, his quiet court demeanor, as just a calculated act for the jury.
Okay, so beyond Cassie's testimony, your sources cover a number of other allegations and lawsuits too, right? This seems to go wider.
Yes, quite a bit wider. A really significant one is the lawsuit from producer Lil Rod Jones. It's reportedly over 100 pages long, detailing alleged crimes like grooming, exploitation, drug distribution.
And it names other people too, associates.
Yes, other high-profile individuals and Diddy's associates are reportedly named. Lil Rod, the producer, he was allegedly required to live with Diddy for over a year while working on an album. And during that time, he claims he witnessed and endured a lot the night. Exploitation, drug use.
The lawsuit reportedly mentions Cuba Gooding Jr.
It does, alleging Diddy set up circumstances leading to Lil Rod having intercourse with Cuba and then claiming Cuba groped him. Cuba Gooding Jr. has denied it publicly, called it absurd.
But your sources mention there are pictures included in the lawsuit.
Reportedly, yes. Pictures that apparently show someone looking like Cuba Gooding Jr. in a close physical interaction with Lil Rod.
Bishop T.D. Jakes is also mentioned in that Lil Rod suit.
Yes, reportedly, Diddy leveraged his connection to Jakes to try and lessen the Cassie fallout. The suit doesn't directly accuse Jakes of crimes, but just his name being linked to Diddy's parties raised eyebrows. Jakes' spokesperson said he only attended one gathering briefly.
But Diddy's former security guard, Gene Deal, he reportedly said something about that.
Yeah. Deal reportedly attended lots of parties and said things that used to be private now happen openly. He suggested if Bishop Jakes was there, he likely would have seen behavior Deal considered sinful, mentioning acts between men on men, women on women, as examples of things he reportedly saw.
And there are redacted names in the Lil Rod suit, causing speculation. Meek Mill's name has come up.
That's right. Since Diddy's arrest, there's been an audio clip going around claimed to be Diddy and Meek. Meek Mill strongly denied it, saying it's a pattern of false accusations against successful black artists.
The Lil Rod suit also reportedly mentions Young Miami and her cousin.
Yes, alleging Young Miami's cousin, who worked as her assistant, groped Lil Rod and tried non-consensual acts in Diddy's presence after Diddy allegedly gave him cocaine. Lil Rod reportedly says he pushed her away and left. Your sources really stress, though, this lawsuit is ongoing. These are claims, not proven facts in court yet.
Got it. Separately, Jason Lee reportedly claimed he saw Jay-Z and T.D. Jakes at Diddy's place once, but didn't see anything weird. And Jay-Z and Jakes have been pretty quiet publicly since the arrest.
Largely silent, according to your sources. And then there's Khloe Kardashian reportedly admitting on her show back in 2014 that she went to one of Diddy's parties, saw Justin Bieber, and mentioned half the people there were naked.
So another instance of someone seemingly corroborating the unconventional nature of his parties?
Exactly. Your sources also briefly mention another lawsuit from Thalia Graves, filed September 2024, alleging something back in 2001 at Diddy's studio, claiming Diddy and an employee injured her non-consensually, and it was recorded and sold as porn.
And there's even a potential tie-in to the Tupac Shakur murder investigation.
Your sources touch on that. Tupac's family reportedly hired lawyer Alex Spiro to re-examine the case, specifically looking into claims by Dwayne Keefe D. Davis that Diddy offered him $1 million for a hit on Tupac.
Wow. And finally, just rounding out the context, your sources mention the New York City mayor, Eric Adams, being indicted around the same time as Diddy's arrest.
Yeah, on campaign finance charges related to his 2021 campaign. Federal investigators are looking into it. The deputy mayor and others resigned afterwards. Some people drew connections because of the timing, but your sources just report these facts neutrally.
Okay, so looking ahead now, the trial reportedly started May 12th, 2025. How long could this go on?
Sources note it could potentially last up to 2 months. The charges are serious. Racketeering, conspiracy, trafficking, transportation offenses.
And the potential outcomes.
Yeah.
Legal experts cited in your sources lay them out.
They do. If he's convicted on everything, he could potentially face life in prison. Even conviction on just some charges could mean decades. A full acquittal. Those experts view that as less likely given the reported evidence, although those jurisdictional arguments could potentially affect which charges stick.
Is a plea deal still on the table, according to the sources?
It's presented as a possibility, but that usually means admitting guilt, right? And Diddy has reportedly refused to do that publicly. His team keeps saying he's innocent, never assaulted anyone.
But your sources suggest that position might be getting harder to maintain. with the volume of allegations and reported evidence.
That's the suggestion. The scope here is huge allegations spanning over 30 years, numerous accusers. It points potentially to a pattern of behavior.
And your sources argue this pattern, if it exists, might have been enabled by the environment around him in the entertainment industry.
Yeah, involving associates, employees, others who allegedly helped facilitate things or just look the other way. The involvement of staff allegedly helping set things up definitely raises questions about complicity, according to your sources.